Yes, we do. We're here. We might as well. All right. So, mentally. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is January 28th, 27th, 2020, and the time is 6:08. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet upon the front table. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures that the Commission will follow tonight. First, the Commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items, and for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The Planning and Zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing would be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record. All interested parties shall be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the Commission. The Commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the Commission. The Commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda item. Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is public opinion. Do we have the public part? No? Public? Here. Citizens wishing to be heard? Okay. Seeing and having none in presence, we'll move on to the next one, election for chairperson and vice chairperson. I'm assuming we need to make not a motion, but what am I thinking? Nominate? Nominate? Somebody want to make a nomination? Bruce?
Stay in the same position?
I'll stay if you guys
Okay.
want me here.
Is that motion? Yeah, second.
Okay, so we have an motion and a second. Do you need it by ballot, everybody to vote at this point, or no? Roll call? Okay, so it's unanimous? Yeah, okay, okay. That's very informal. How about vice president then? We need a nomination? Anybody want? Anybody?
Nominate Tom.
You have a nominate Tom?
You better show up.
Oh, this could be fun. Okay, we have a nomination. We have any other nominations?
We could nominate Barb.
Oh, good. She's not here.
She got reappointed.
Okay, well, I heard Tom. Is that what everybody wants to do? Is that unanimous? Except for Tom? Tom, you can nominate someone else. I mean, we can have a battle here. You bet. You can have as many. We can have all of us nominated if you want, except me. I'm out now. Good to go?
More likely you won't have to do it like I had to.
So it looks like everybody is in favor of having Tom for the vice chair. Are we good? All right, move on to the next one. Possible revisions to zoning ordinance, floodplain ordinance, Iowa Model Ordinance, Iowa DNR, section 3.04, access and street frontage. Are we going to try and do all of this tonight?
We are, but it's actually, meeting's gonna be over in probably 10 minutes because all I need you folks to do tonight is to decide whether or not you want to make a motion to set a public hearing in the future, either next month or the following month, on these items. And that would be a public hearing to discuss and develop a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on each one of these, and whether or not we want to recommend adoption of the proposed language.
Okay. So are we going to go through that information now?
I think that, I think we've already discussed access and street frontage and telecommunication towers in the past, that I don't really feel like we need to tonight, but Dan did talk about having Bill Capuccio, the state floodplain manager, talk about the proposed floodplain ordinance. And so I can call him and he can give us a sort of cursory overview of it. But in terms of actual, the actual meat and potatoes of it, Dan, I know I've sent you guys like 60, 70 page documents that show you step by step. And if you follow that, I went through it and it is very simple to understand and it's right. It's just, you know, I don't think you guys want to go through every proposed definition or the change of order. I mean, because basically what our impression is that the state is trying to get the floodplain ordinance to look more like state statute. So just like rearranging stuff, putting definitions in the front.
If I understood him right at the last meeting, he's adjusting this to coincide with the state, like you're saying.
Yes.
And that's all he's doing. And that way, the state's gonna play in the sand bit easier than if it's something against how they want it run.
Yes, it's sort of like matching or charting our accounts with theirs. And so section 5 of ours will read the same as section 5 of the state. Our floodplain map districts will be the same codes as the states. It's weird, it doesn't make sense, but like right now, we take the states and then we convert it and then we figure out our local code. It's like, why don't we
It's
just?
confusing.
It's stupid.
It's
It's
streamline
it's
it.
confusing. And so that's basically what it is. And really, the Iowa DNR floodplain ordinance, it's FEMA mandates the responsibility to the states. And then cities and counties that choose to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, when they do, then that local responsibility becomes theirs. And that's when, you know, our office will have to work in coordination with the state. And that's why we like this proposed change to match our language with the state language.
Okay, but we have some alternate language that they're just suggesting, and so that's kind of some of the stuff I was looking at. If it's not required, you know, I'd like to go through some of this item by item, because some it's required. We don't have a choice, our hands are tied. But first of all, the detailed flood insurance study, we have that obviously because it reflects that in our October 1st, 1994 Federal Register. I've never seen it. You know, I'd love to see it. It's probably interesting. And I also noted that this is a sample, so this is not written in concrete. We still have flexibility with it. So we don't necessarily have to go with everything that's said here, I'm assuming. So
let me call up Bill.
I don't like changes for the sake of change. I like changes because they're going to make a difference. They're going to make it better. I don't know how, have you guys?
Well, the thing is where did this all come from to begin with? And you're just updating everything
Hey, good evening, Bill. It's David Weiser, Woodbury County. How are you? Oh, not too bad. We're sitting here in our zoning commission meeting. Dan's not with us. As you know, he's off to the floodplain training in Illinois. And so, if you wouldn't mind, I have the majority of our zoning commissioners here, and if you would just like to give us an overview of what this proposed ordinance is, kind of where it came from, why it's in front of them, and what are we supposed to do with it?
Okay. Well, in short, we're always looking at things that need to be corrected in our law. We give model ordinances to communities who are joining the National Flood Insurance Program or maybe are readopting them for one reason or another. And we're always making improvements because things change. The most recent model ordinance were a number of things that were in there. First, there were a number of definitions that FEMA headquarters had asked to be added.
on the topic of, thank you, Bill, on the topic of optional language, you know, base flood elevation, requiring individuals to raise, you know, above the base flood elevation, a foot or 2 feet. We discussed that. Dan and I kind of had the consensus amongst ourselves that we weren't going to recommend that we change that. Are there communities that have stricter criteria, or is there anything that you see?
There are a number of communities that have stricter criteria. All communities in Iowa are required to protect buildings to a minimum 1 foot above the 100-year flood or base flood. Well, excuse me, Dave, that's also another thing, is that trying to get away from the use of the 100-year flood for its term. It's one of those terms that is so easily misunderstood. We decided that of the choices, let's just use base flood because that's the one that FEMA uses, and it doesn't talk about 1% change, et cetera, et cetera. The base flood is just more or less, again, it ties back to that 1% change occurring in any given year, also known as the 100-year flood, but the term is not as badly misunderstood, so thanks for bringing that up. But yes, we have a number of communities that require structures to be elevated more than 1 foot above the base flood elevation. And hold on just a second, I can tell you exactly how many.
I mean, so obviously a foot higher is going to add that much more protection. We were looking at cost of development and what sort of impact that would have on people's
Well,
ability.
depending on where you are, it may have an impact, and it may have a positive impact for the individual. Give me 1 second. Higher Freeport, we have 10 communities that require more than 1 foot above the base flood elevation. We have several that require 3. Now, where does it take and benefit the individual? It's in your unmembered A zones, like you have down around Farmers Ditch.
Yeah.
If you only elevate 1 foot above the 100-year flood that we're providing people, flood insurance rate is not that good. You elevate 2 foot above the 100-year flood, and it drops, I want to say something like 70%. And so it's one of those things where if you don't require people to elevate 2 feet above, you might want to take and at least advise them that elevating an extra foot might save them a lot of money over the years. And if you want, while we're talking about other things, I'll take and pull up my insurance rates and tell you exactly how much that is.
Okay. And if the county were to keep it at 1 and someone went above that and they are in the National Flood Insurance Program, will they still receive that benefit?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, if
so.
a person wants to elevate higher than required by your ordinance, the higher they elevate, they'll still get a better rate. They'll always get a better rate by elevating higher.
Okay. Are there, you mentioned the 500 year versus 500-year flood for, I forget what you called it. The more,
Maximum damage potential uses.
yeah, the more,
Hazard, high hazard.
substantial valuation, high hazard, the hospitals, the power plants, those sort of things.
Actually, we have made that mandatory in some respects. We probably should because that's required by the DNR's regulations.
Okay.
Maximum damage potential uses.
Real quick before I forget. If a person elevates their house to 1 foot above the base flood elevation in those unnumbered zone A's, their initial rate for the first $60,000 worth of coverage is $2.58 a hundred. If they elevate to 2 or more feet, it's 55 cents a hundred. So that's over a $2 difference.
Yeah. It's good savings.
How much was it?
Chris, what was that?
So if Megan 2.0 goes into effect, the rates I'm talking about right now might have nothing to do,
Okay.
or it may have plenty to do. We just don't know right now because it's just a myth. It's just mythical right now as much as FEMA's told us.
Bill, how do communities make that determination or on the, what's that word, Chris?
The maximum damage potential uses, that one?
Yes.
Maximum damage potential uses.
Maximum damage potential uses.
How
So,
do they make a decision on what should be a maximum damage potential use?
yeah,
Well, if you look at the definition that we give as optional language in the ordinance, let me pull that up real quick. It's probably, if I remember correctly, we used the language that was similar to what's in our rules. And hospitals and like institutions, buildings or building complexes containing documents, data, or instruments of great public value, like the assessor's office, like tax records, like things like that. Buildings and building complexes containing materials dangerous to the public for fuel storage facilities. A company that maybe manufactures hazardous materials, anhydrous tanks, and commercial anhydrous tanks, things of that nature. Power installations, a power plant, things like substations, things like that. And other buildings or building complexes similar in nature or use. So you get the idea. It's something that you wouldn't want to lose in a flood.
okay,
You probably don't want to lose, you probably would rather not have to worry about evacuating a jail in the middle of a flood. You probably would rather not worry about a hospital being flooded because you're going to probably need that facility during and after a flood, or the inconvenience or the health issues that come from that. Things of that nature. Again, having your county IT service with all their servers, et cetera, probably would want that protected because if that floods, that's going to take and that's going to shut down the county government. Those kinds of things.
how many communities, where are communities at with this across the state? Is it still pretty fresh or,
Well, again, we just recently put it in our ordinance, but let me check and see how many communities have adopted that.
that's the last question I had, so if you guys have any questions, shoot. I would just add that,
I'm already up to 20 communities. I just leafing through on the ones that have adopted higher standards.
okay,
I've got 20, 21, so probably about 25, we'll say, have adopted it so far. And this is something that we've just recently put in our model ordinance. Again, it's required by state law anyway.
yeah.
And so a lot of communities are saying, well, put it in there because the state's going to come in and say, whoa, you're going to need us to approve that. And so it makes it a little more convenient for the applicant, especially in communities such as Woodbury County where we've delegated authority. That way they don't have to wind up on our backlog. You can just handle it locally.
And once the commission comes up and formulates their recommendations and what they want to adopt, do we need anything else from the state to move forward with adoption here? Is there anything?
Well, I would most definitely suggest that you send it to us before you go to adoption. That way we make sure that that everything you've done is according to law. And that
that answers my question, so any of the commissioners have anything?
I saw one thing in your ordinance that you were looking at that I will take and say one thing that I saw that I questioned, and I wanted to take and bring it up to you. And, hold on a second, it's in the floodway, I'm going through your language here. And again, the optional language, I mean, if you see that it would benefit what you're trying to accomplish, you definitely encourage you to adopt it. If it doesn't, well, understand that too. Some of the other alternate language having to do with datums, we put that in there because we still have some communities out there with paper maps, or with some like with digital maps, that's still with an NGBD datum as opposed to NABD datum. Everybody else is getting new maps, is getting them with a new datum. So that's just optional for people who still have those old maps. Okay, under your section 3, excuse me, one more thing. Okay, your section 6 on floodway overlay district. Well, okay, you had it. Yeah, you had it. I was concerned if you had under permitted uses, any of the things that you were proposing, like looking at maybe only having agricultural uses, et cetera, that are in your existing ordinance. As the only allowable use or permissible uses there, and then going to performance standards, where it will be more or less that all uses within the floodway district shall be permitted to the extent that they are not prohibited by the performance standards. And so, yeah, if you go that direction, yeah, you're not as restrictive. And when I first read it, I thought that maybe you were going to be overly restricted. No, you're fine. But again, run it past us when if you make some changes, run it past us. It won't take us that long to go through it. And that way we make sure that there's no mistakes there that you might have missed. So that we don't wind up having somebody at FEMA headquarters say, no, we found a mistake, and they're going to have to re-adopt something.
Yeah. I think what we'll do is we will take home this information and schedule our next meeting. And at that meeting, Dan and I will present to the board what we're suggesting. We'll have the ordinance plugged in with all of our recommendations, and then we'll also have the options for you to review, and we'll just go through one by one. So that's gonna,
I'm ready to do it right now.
you guys wanna do that now?
I'm ready. Tom? And you, Sean? What do you think? I'm ready to go through it and hammer it out. I mean, a lot of the stuff I found in here is already in our ordinances.
It is.
It is, even the highlighted stuff. It's like, well, that's in there already. That definition's there. That's the definitions I have no problems with. That
Yeah.
clarifies the message. So I'm ready to go through it.
All right.
That's kind of what I thought our intent was tonight.
All right, well, Bill, if you guys don't have any other questions for Bill, we'll let you get scooting. Thank you, Bill.
No problem, guys. Take care.
Yes.
Oops. Too late. So when
So as he was saying, so the conditional use permit requirement that was in there before, it was in our language, but it was never followed. And so that was one of the first questions that we had on that, because we couldn't find any history. And Bill said, well, it's in there, but I don't think you guys ever used it before.
we never had to so far.
So, should have.
Maybe,
But we
you know,
didn't.
it's,
And so we decided, well, then let's just eliminate that, because if we can go ahead and still administratively process it, then let's do that. And then in the flood hazard areas that we looked at, it's mainly agricultural land. There's not really, we don't really see a lot of demand for permits for residences in flood hazard areas where they would have to, raise above it. there's been some in the past, but we don't see them. And in the areas that flood, special flood hazard area, I mean, if you can get the points, if you want to add or go above, then that's great, but why would we want to mandate and, you know, put the burden, an increased burden or a financial burden on people? And most of the structures that we do see, there are changes with the different standards for not being a residence. So like your ag buildings and things like that, they don't require them to be built to withstand flooding, so.
Yeah, they're exempt, basically,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of like, okay, why are we beating that one to death? Let's move on. So how about, you guys want to start just by going over our stuff, or going over this, or do you have comments on item by item, or
I guess I would suggest that we wait until next month, because this isn't in the format that this is what they sent us, but I actually want to write it so that way it's in the format that we're going to adopt.
But we have everything all right here in our own ordinance. Why aren't they just inserted? Why don't we just insert them where they need to be inserted and put them in the order that the DNR is recommending?
That's what we're proposing.
I mean, that way we can do and give our 2 cents worth right now, and then you guys can go ahead and do that, and we eliminate one step in the process if we can get it done tonight.
So before we do a public hearing, you actually want to send it down and we can receive it back, correct? So
Yeah.
that whatever
Mhm.
we adopt will be.
Well, you know, you have to have the actual, for the public meetings, that has to be done first anyhow, or should be done first anyhow.
Got to final product.
Well, the public hearing would be to have the discussion, and ultimately, yeah, this is what we're going to end up recommending.
Because if you make changes to what you present at the public meeting, then
You could have to do it
another one
again.
present to them anyhow.
Right.
Or does it take 2 public hearings anyway? One?
No, based on what Bill said just now with wanting to review it, I would say that I would not schedule the next meeting to be a public hearing unless it's in final draft form. The state has said, go ahead, it's good for adoption. So but we can go through it right now.
So if I'm looking at this, I started out with the floodplain management ordinance by the state, by DNR. I looked at all of their definitions. We don't have the base floodplain elevation in there. To add definitions to ours is, I think, helps with clarity.
We did have base flood, but we didn't have base flood
Elevate.
elevation. So
Exactly.
slight difference.
Exactly.
You can see the nuances. I think Ann did a pretty
Right.
good job of highlighting what it was.
The other highlighted area was the enclosed area below lowest floor. We have that in our definitions on page 73, word for word, verbatim. The only thing that isn't in there is the reference to section 7B41. $500-year floodplain, we don't have that. That's a definition again. That'd be easy to add. Flood insurance study is a good definition, something people probably haven't heard before. The next yellow area is page 4, the special flood hazard area. Again, it's just
Page 3.
page 4. This one right here, just that one
Mine says
series of
3.
word. Oh, okay, that confuses us all that much more. Okay.
Special flood hazard area, you
So it
said?
says, yeah, the flood fringe. We had the flood fringe definition in ours already, our ordinances, but it just didn't have the special flood hazard area. So it's just clarification of the definition. So I think that's probably good, don't you?
It is, the way that you get to special flood hazard area through ours is that you have to refer to 2 different sections, so this is very helpful.
Okay. Then the lowest floor, we already had part of the definition, but it was increased to enclosed area below lowest floor are met. It's not that whole section. On the bottom lowest floor.
The lowest floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So really, the only thing that was added there is enclosed area below lowest floor are met. The rest of it was already in ours. The next one was the maximum damage potential uses. That's kind of a no-brainer. That needs to be in there, don't you think? For good reason.
Prison and a hospital.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Visitors when the water's coming are actually very cooperative.
Right, yes, absolutely,
Not a bit of trouble.
absolutely.
Still don't want to be there. You could be the one floating down.
So I found a couple other ones that aren't on ours that aren't highlighted in yellow. And maybe you guys found it. It's the minor projects on the next page, top of the next page. I don't think that's in ours, our definitions. But it's not highlighted in yellow either.
Is that $500?
Yeah.
There was reference to it, but I don't think it was a definition in a different area.
That's not like even $500 just doesn't seem like much money for anything anymore. Is there value in that as a definition?
I think how we've handled things like this before is not so much the penalties, but to inform people, because it's already a financial burden to be in a floodplain if they have to do repairs, in my opinion. I think that's how we've handled it
Well, yeah.
before. Yeah. So to incur additional expense, for somebody who's already stressed, I don't think is fair, but that's me. The other one I found that wasn't in our definition was the routine maintenance of existing buildings and facilities. Thoughts on that one? Actually, 74. Oh, I take that back. It was 2. It mentioned Zone A and the other zones. So the only difference in that one was the addition of the different zones. I'm looking at page 5 on the DNRs, and page 74 on ours. Zones. Jump in anytime, guys. Be too quiet. Okay, and the next one I found on page 6 of the DNRs was structure. What they added was grain storage facilities, and I was just curious to find out why that was added.
It's exempt.
Right. I mean, we fought for those exemptions.
Are we talking commercial grain storage or
It just says grain storage facility, it doesn't, I mean, what does that mean?
which has confusion?
Well, I would think it wouldn't matter either way, whether it's commercial.
If it's exempt,
Well, commercial wouldn't be exempt.
No, no, but
the way it's.
the way this
mentioned
is,
in
what
here.
does this refer to is what she's getting at, does it mean grain
Private
bins?
farmers?
Does it mean
Yeah.
a grain
but-
lake, does it mean a commercial facility? I think that's,
Right, where do you draw the line on that one?
I think that one's going to get you in a lot of trouble. They'll have probably a revolt.
so you said
And-
yours is on page 6, it's on
Mine-
page 5.
Mine's on page 6. It says structure, under
Yeah,
structure.
but that's on page 5.
That's what I
Okay.
told her
So
before.
you've got,
We're
off
one
the
off.
page.
one off.
Yeah, we're trying to be one off here.
But yeah, it's under structure, but that's under page 5 on
Okay.
ours.
Because I know when we were developing these ordinances, we struck anything that had anything to do with ag because it's exempt. And that's state code too, so it conflicts.
But you're saying there should be a delete here.
Well,
We need a
why-
definition. What is it?
Yeah,
Is it commercial?
Is it referring to a grain elevator?
Right.
That's a commercial
But it-
entity, or is it referring to a?
But if they
Only
rebuild a
farm.
house in a low area, they're exempt too, but they still should be going by, right?
So anybody developing a floodplain has to follow these. Doesn't matter.
I know, but who's gonna be out there to enforce it if you don't see it happening until after the fact?
This goes back to the way we've always done it. Somebody's going to turn you in.
But then it's too late, it's already there.
That's it. I know. That's kind of how it's been in the past.
Well, I know. Well, it's just like I asked Dan the other day, I was wondering why they tore down that house on Glen Ellen, and they're rebuilding it now. Can't say their name, right across the street, across the Highway 20 from us. They tore that house completely down, and now they're rebuilding it.
Oh. Down by the church.
Yeah.
You guys have flooding over there?
No, but they tore it down, and they didn't have to have a permit. But Dan said they came in and filed for one, but because because that's ag, they didn't need to have a permit to rebuild that property. That's what I'm getting at, right?
But yeah, but they're not in the floodplain.
No, they're not in a floodplain, but that's the same situation that I'm talking about. In a floodplain area, that could happen. They could tear a house down and rebuild in that same situation. And if the assessor doesn't catch it, for one, nobody's gonna know, and they may not necessarily turn it in, because do they contact you when something new goes up?
Well, that's the other thing then, because it refers back then to any kind of damage or additions.
50% more on what's there, 50% damage. And that's what I process.
Yeah, so, and basically, it's above ground, really doesn't matter if it's in the floodplain, you have to talk to us. You have to provide that documentation.
But not everybody knows that.
That's why we have to.
I know. I know, that, but you see my point? You know, I'm just,
Devil's advocate
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the next
When I saw, initially I didn't think it was there, that substantial damage. Just the next one, it's not highlighted in red, but it has the optional language. I'm wondering, okay, why have we delineated or distinguished 10-year from what we have, which has no year?
Well, that's what he talked about in that conversation. He kind of made it sound like it's an advantage for people to some extent.
Yeah, if you live in an area where you're getting nailed all the time, do you want to do something different for that? And what he was basically saying is that some of those people might be banking on that fact that if they do reach that criteria that substantially damage 50% or more, then they have access to funding through the National Flood Insurance Program, and so they get rates like super low. So I think what he was saying is that
Yeah.
it's a benefit for somebody.
He expressed it as a benefit, but I see where it can also,
That's restrictive.
yeah,
Way more restrictive.
if somebody else doesn't want to rebuild, or they want to rebuild, they want to remain there, then this would maybe preclude them from that. That's where the avenue you're thinking.
That's what I'm thinking. I think if we can get away from anything that confines their decision-making.
Process. I would
Because
just
what
as
you're
soon
doing
get
there is
away from
basically
it.
adding another
Layer,
avenue to say, hey, no,
No.
because this has happened to you
Ex-
twice, but it's
ex-
only been 25%.
exactly.
That's happened twice in 10 years.
Yeah, and I'd rather not see additional language like that. It just complicates things more. That's my opinion. And I know we've gotten rid of, when we were doing this, as much as we could as far as what we thought was going to restrict people being able to survive these kind of things. And then it goes back down to the next one, on substantial improvement on number 1.
It goes back to the 10-year period. I just want to see that out.
Myself, for the same reason.
So theoretically, that could even equate to 5 events that exceed 10% damage, which could be reached pretty
I mean,
easily.
if you establish a 25% or 50%, I think that's good enough, but for time limits or time restraints or something like that, I think that's burdensome to the public. in general. Then the next paragraph, that last one. The alternative to exempt is substantially improve damaged historical structures before we've done the variance process. And that hasn't really changed as far as our ordinance either. I mean, it seems redundant to me.
Is that what you guys found? So an alternative to exempting substantially improved damaged historical structures from the elevation requirements of the ordinance by definition would be to handle them individually through the variance process. These are historical structures, right? This option provides the community an opportunity to require that all reasonable measures are used to reduce the structure's flood damage potential by relocating the utilities and everything, but not preclude the structure's designation as a historic structure. One of the examples I can think of that needs work, but is the Stoddard House down in Sloan. I don't think any of Sloan is still in the floodplain. Have they taken Sloan out of the floodplain?
I don't know.
But that's a historical structure.
What is?
Stoddard Mansion in Sloan. There's no way you'd be able to do anything to alleviate the elevation. You could alleviate maybe some of the mechanicals because somebody would have to repair it anyway. But the majority of the people, I think, are going to do this kind of stuff, so I'm not finding that as burdensome. Any thoughts on that?
I guess, I'm comfortable just, instead of exempting them, could do it through the variant. I mean, I don't think I'm understanding this. So what this is saying is that, the way I was reading this is that it's saying that we're not gonna tack in any improvements that were already on the books, or if there were any code issues.
That's how I'm reading it, safety code specifications that you have to identify.
Not-
Existing violations, you're not however including any project for improvement of structure to correct existing violations.
But I think what they're doing there is they're just, instead of just saying that historical structures are exempt, we're going to treat that by case-to-case issue with the variance.
With the variance.
Where we would then dictate, maybe the electrical and all this has to be placed.
Right.
That's what the change is for. Instead of exempting them just flat out.
Right.
They're saying, well, let's not exempt them, let's put a or treat it through the variance process. And then we'll say, okay, you can do this, but you have to move,
Right.
what you can do.
But on the flip side, I think somebody who's in that position with the historic are going to
No,
do
I would
everything
just
they
explain
can.
That's what this
Yeah, I
change
agree.
would
Yeah,
create.
yep.
Basically, it would say, instead of you're exempt and letting them
Right.
say, well, it's a good idea, let's move this electrical
Right.
4 feet so we
Right.
don't have to worry about flood again.
Do we need to require it as an ordinance or go through that
Or
process?
just let
Or
the
just
people that are doing it
historic, let them do it.
figure it out that if there probably isn't a real need, I think what you're looking at is there's probably not a real need to handle it through a variance because the fact is that if it's a historical site, they're gonna do what they can
To improve.
prevent these issues anyhow. I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking is?
Leave it
I
alone.
would agree.
Leave it alone.
I would agree.
I don't know who would check up on it anyway. That was-
Don't create more burdens
Well,
for
I
the
would agree
public
with that,
under the
but if they want to
circumstances.
do this, they're probably going to say, well, let's do this, prevent this.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
like telecommunications towers, if they're put in an area where they're subject to flooding or damage, they move their electronics up to above that flood grade level so that even if they do experience it, because they need it in that location, they're minimizing their damage if there is a situation. And that's more than likely what any historical building or the board that would be overseeing that would also look at those facts. I would
Right,
think, if it's feasible.
I
Maybe
think-
sometimes it's not even feasible to do it and they have to do something. But a
exactly.
variance would still probably then say, okay.
Yeah, go ahead and do it. You eliminate one more step for them to have to go through under the circumstances, which,
So
yeah,
the
we want
current
those
exemption
preserved.
For those buildings is probably substantial,
I think it's sufficient.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, and then on the substantial damage one, we want to leave it, we don't want to add anything in here in 25.
I don't want to put a date
I would think you're creating too many instances that then could come up where, wait a minute, then
Well,
we gotta go back through and maybe
10 years of, records or something to find out if there's something there, but it also, I think it restricts our people too much. Okay. Then I didn't find anything else until, let's see, on page 10, on the DNRs. At the top, it should be a B, and then a C. And then it goes to the alternative language as a national whatever, vertical datum. What is the difference between that and the North American vertical datum? I mean, what's the point of changing something like that? How is it significant? Okay, because if there ends up being something that's going to trigger something, I want to know it. Okay. And then on the very bottom of the page where it's yellow again, on the I, maintaining the accuracy of the community's flood insurance rate maps when, and I think we all do this already, if I'm not mistaken, when we have to develop place within the floodway over, it doesn't matter to me if it's the ordinance, it doesn't really affect anybody, but it keeps the data up to date, is what it sounds like. It's a housekeeping thing for you. And then to perform the site inspections to ensure compliance. You do that anyway, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's nice that they started to put more of that stuff online.
Makes it easier.
That book is huge.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh my gosh. And then the next page on K, forward all requests for variances to the Board of Adjustment. We do that already anyway, right? That's just standard procedure. Ensure all requests include the information ordinarily submitted with applications. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's just, okay, here it is. This is our step. This is our process. It's kind of an open book. Okay, the other one I saw, location and dimensions of all buildings and building additions. Don't most people provide that when they submit their applications? Yeah. Put that in, but part of me is like, why are we requiring these things when people are already doing it? We're making the restrictions that much more.
Just covering yourself so they know where the
Basically.
building is.
Basically, yeah. So you have a
That's all it
record of
is.
what it's supposed to be, a paper trail.
And we've incorporated these stuff like a checklist, so
Good.
most of the stuff.
But we don't have to make an ordinance out of it. We have a checklist here. We have to fill it out.
This is kind of a no-brainer, though, to know where the buildings are supposed to be located. For more things than one, fire, anything,
Well-
emergency services.
But like you said, I think it's with the site plan, it's already included.
It's
It's
included.
just not written in the ordinance to specifically say that you.
Right. That's what the state and the DNR wants. It's already something we have. It's kind of a gimme.
It's not killing us.
No? It's not adding more burden to you.
No, it's already there, so.
Right. So the elevation one, the last one that's yellow on that page, alternative language, it goes back to the switching the language. And I want to know why. What's the difference between the two?
Next page, it goes into establishing the zoning overlay district, zone 4. I think that's great, because now we have something that we can use in comparison with the maps. We can make it more defined, not cross-referencing.
Yes.
Then throughout,
On the bottom of the page, it's highlighted as base flood elevation. And actually, we go by 100-year flood elevation in our documents. I don't know if you noticed that. So
ours is more restrictive already.
identifying that level.
Well, 100-year and base flood, they're the same thing. aren't
Basically
they?
the same thing, but it spells it out. Ours spells it out.
Well, what if you talk about that too? Not changing it, referring to it differently.
It's defined as the 1% chance, correct? It's
Right.
the way it's,
Right. That's the minimum. I mean, that's one thing that when you talk to people about building and construction, that's the minimum, that's required. But we recommend going above that because that will affect your rates for your flood insurance.
Yeah, and so, and I think in this or this context, it's basically saying, you can't put anything in there that's gonna increase that base. So it's like you have a tub of dishes, you put a hole in there. to
Right.
make the rest of the water
Right,
rise,
right.
increase that base.
But I noticed that before, and I think when we wrote this before, we were upset that it was just base rate because somebody thought, okay, well, that means anything. If the state or the DNR decides that's 200 foot, then it's automatically
Oh.
changes this to 200 foot.
Like I said, what you just referred to though, that's different than,
What we're saying.
yeah, I think it's.
So the-
If you do something that, if it's in a sauce, then you put something in there that if you have the 100-year flood, whatever you do is gonna raise, if you have a 100-year flood, it's gonna raise what the base elevation is. That's what he's talking about.
Right, right. I'm talking about just the language. Base flood elevation is not descriptive enough for someone who reads it that might not be from this area. Well, what is
So
that?
you're not really saying that that's an issue that it's here.
No,
It's
I
just
just don't want,
figure out where-
I don't want to change though, because ours is more restrictive. Ours is 100-year, where base could be anything.
When you say base, I guess I assume you look at this map and one color is gonna be base flood elevation, and that's pretty much just gonna be what it is, correct?
It is. Will everybody know that?
I guess, yeah, I mean, that to me is how you correlate it, I don't know.
Right, I mean, I would,
Yeah, I don't
naturally.
think you know it until you have to learn it. I mean, I don't know.
But, so back to that.
But it
we have
spells
a
it.
100-year flood event, I think on the phone call, didn't he say that they're just turning it, using the terminology base flood elevation
Right.
to refer to.
The
and it says
100-year.
right here, it's basically, it's also commonly referred to as a 100-year flood.
Right, right.
So are they just want to use that as a more understandable term?
Because
I don't
if
know.
we're identifying 100-year already in our language, why change it to something that's,
vague to
to the layperson that's reading this?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they're just kind of used interchangeably and it's kind of, I don't know.
I just don't want it to be one of those things that all of a sudden somebody changed that base to be 200 instead of 100. And then it's like, oh, wait, everything changed then. The whole,
You don't have a
everything.
definition of a base flood. It just says
It's
here
just
that it's
base.
commonly referred to as a
Right.
100-year flood event.
Right. Right. If you keep reading. If you keep reading.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying, that you could leave the 100-year flood event.
I would
and
leave
you're
it.
still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interchangeable.
I think the 100-year is just more definitive.
I might, yeah, almost like to send it down that way, just to see if they kind of want to sponge that
Hedge
for
it,
some reason.
yeah. Why do you
it
want to
seems
sponge
like-
that? Why? So that came up as a question mark for me anyway.
What is that on again?
You're going to see it throughout the whole
It's
document.
referred to throughout,
Oh,
it's
Yeah.
just
Right
talking.
here on the front is where.
One
So
of-
anywhere it says base flood elevation, you want 100-year to add?
Yeah, because that's what we have, and it's more restrictive.
So here we put out the front, and as that also commonly referred to as a 100-year flood in parentheses.
Chris, let me ask you this though, if you leave the definition, base flood,
Mm-hmm.
and then it has,
Mhm.
the description is the 100-year, or
Yep.
referred to as a 100-year
Yep.
flood. So then if you use the base flood elevation throughout here, if you look at the definition, it is the
Basically,
100-year flood.
right, basically it is.
That would work.
Right, right. I can't, if you're going to use ours and just
Don't take out
insert
the
everything,
Stylistic.
Don't take
It's-
out the definition 100-year flood, make
Right.
sure that that's what the base flood elevation means.
right,
Then
right.
it's okay to
It-
leave that in
I don't
here as
care.
it's referred to,
Right.
because it's defined,
I got you.
this
Right.
is what it is.
I got you.
I
If
see
we're-
what you're saying, because
If we're going to go back in and word all of this stuff off of our document, though, why change all of our stuff
well,
to
I
this
think,
stuff?
I think the recommendation just was the fact that that's what maybe
Sure.
other counties or maybe, I don't know who refers to it, but as
Right.
long as the definition contains the fact that.
We'll just
this is
add
what
that
this means.
100-year
That's it.
reference in the definition.
It's there. It's there.
Gotcha.
We're all good.
Cool.
It's all good. It was just a language that bothered me. Then it said something about extended,
Copy editor for a newspaper.
I could be. And then it said, the next one, it said extended foundations. I don't know what those are, but I have no problem putting
What's that?
right
Here.
under residential structures. They changed structures to resident, something else. They changed that word too. That bothered me. It's like, why are you changing shit? Stuff, I mean.
What word is that, on 14?
On,
13.
On page 13 for some, but it's number 2, residential structures.
Okay.
In our language, it was residential buildings. So it's moot, really. It doesn't make any difference. It means the same thing. Again, it bothered me. But I didn't know what extended foundations were, but if they help secure a property,
I would think
It must
an
be the same
extended
thing.
foundation is they went deeper with the foundation to get lower.
same thing as a pier, just name something different. Pier,
The piling.
okay.
Maybe they drove a piling in the ground deeper too.
Well, no, they're actually raising it.
Yeah, I guess extend would be bringing it
They're
up, wouldn't
bringing
it?
it up higher
Mhm.
with an extended foundation.
But
That's what-
within that parentheses, it's already mentioning a pier too, so
Why
I'm
not?
assuming it's something
When
the
I
same.
saw the
On
pier,
stilts.
Yeah, well,
when I saw,
basically, like in
Well, yeah.
Florida,
it can go either way,
right.
yeah.
So I
So-
just,
So they're just basically adding another, instead of a pier, foundation could be, they're adding it in because it's an acceptable use to elevate. Is that?
more
And
clarification,
instead of a pier,
basically.
Because the definition of a pier is probably different than the definition of a foundation.
That's, I didn't look it up, so that's what I was curious about.
That's all they're doing though, is they're saying if you do a pier or a foundation,
It
they're
gives,
adding
it gives you
another
options.
method to elevate
Pier
it.
needs a
Okay.
foundation though.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the or, because the or was in that, not the and word, so. It said optional, language, subject to favorable consideration by the Board of Adjustment, we already have that in ours. That doesn't need to be highlighted. Okay, and then the next one, the all new residential structures located in areas that would become isolated due to flooding. Ours mentions this, but it doesn't go into the detail. Matter of fact, I think that whole first part of that is in there, but it doesn't go into detail. Then when estimating flood warning time, considerations should be given to criteria listed in blah, 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 the Iowa Administrative Code. So basically, we have all that in there already. We're just adding more to it to justify. And if I look real hard, I can find it, or let you know later. Then on number 3, they switched the word again. We had non-residential, what did I say before? Not structures, but. That's the hardest part, is jumping back and forth between all of these, because they're not in order. So whatever. Structures, base flood elevation again. Alternative language refers to that. The datum. Again, I just want to know what that is.
I'm curious too, because in our overruns, we used the geodetic.
Geodetic. See, so does it really make a difference? It's already in there, basically. And then this one, I've got it on page 14, but it's 4.1. Alternative language, the minimum of 2 openings, having a total net area. We have all of that, except we didn't go into detail, which is what they're doing here. And then I'm wondering, okay, do we need to make that an ordinance, or is that a recommendation? Well, FEMA does not require the ordinance to contain this language. What are your thoughts on that?
It looks like they're adding that just to make it easier to get a lower rate on flood premium, flood insurance premium.
But FEMA doesn't require
No,
it,
no,
so
I
is it,
mean, but that's why, that's the reasoning why I think they
Yeah, 'cause
included
it's-
that wording,
right?
because maybe, I assume the flood insurance, if the flood insurance requires it,
But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
FEMA is the one that sets those flood insurance rates. So if it's not required in their language, how is it triggered? I mean, is it, that's why I'm wondering.
No, they don't require that you do it, but if you do it, you might get a lower rate.
Okay, but it doesn't say
Is
that.
that what that?
It
It
does.
doesn't require the ordinance to contain this language.
Right,
Well,
No,
but it-
But if it triggers something, it should say it's required, right? A higher rate?
well, I don't know, I don't know on this particular one, so I will call Bill and find out, but I think what this is saying, or what this is, I think this is saying is that it sounds like they do require it on having at least 2 walls, so they're trying to tell you like, hey, make sure that it's on at least 2 walls, because it can help them on that premium.
But it says a minimum of 2 openings, having a total area. And then it says alternative is that 2 walls, which, you know, that makes sense. Hopefully they're opposite walls, so the water will flow through.
I wasn't sure about that.
well, they didn't define 2 separate walls, so we,
Mm-mm.
that's why they're adding that.
That's kind of what I thought. I thought they were saying, hey, make sure we include that because it might help to ensure that they're going to get a lower premium.
I would check.
I'll double check.
I would check that one myself. I think, it's like, okay,
if the water
why?
ran in. and you
Better
open
run
the-
out.
Open the doors, and hopefully it's gonna run back out.
Right,
Once-
a window or
Once
something.
the level of water goes down
Mhm.
out.
Yeah,
I guess that one I kind of feel like, why wouldn't we? It seems like it's not really changing much of it other than it's just specifying. 2
really,
walls.
right, 2 walls, 2 openings with positioning on at least 2 walls, which, that makes sense. I mean, I don't want to assume anything, but. Okay, so the next one was, where the distance between the floor and the ceiling on parking vehicles, building access, and low damage potential storage. The lowest floor is 5 feet or more. I was confused by what they were trying to tell us there. Required to sign and record with the county recorder a non-conversion agreement. Do we have that? Do we even use that? That ensures the lower enclosed area remains compliant with the criteria outlined.
Well, what they're at there is that they can sign an agreement, basically.
A non-conversion?
Is that correct? Right now, we're not supposed to. Well, you don't sign the agreement, but
Right.
you build it, that has to be for a storage area or a parking area. And some people maybe would convert it to a game room or whatever it may be.
Living quarters of some
Living
sort.
quarters or something. And you're also, this is going another step to say, well, now we're gonna make you sign an agreement saying you're not gonna.
Okay, but the 5 feet between the floor and the ceiling, below the lowest floor is 5 feet. So is that like a crawl space or more? The applicant is required to sign and record.
5 feet, you can't do
They're
much.
saying for a
there.
crawl space, you don't have to.
Right, if it's less than 5 feet, you don't have to sign that, but if it's more than 5 feet, you have to. And they're saying for the reasoning behind, I'm assuming, is so that you don't convert it to something it's not supposed to be used for. Which,
I think it's gonna give you much for storage, right?
what's that?
But that's not,
But
but that's
crawl
not what they're
space,
saying.
But if it's
If
over
you go
5
bigger.
feet, somebody might say, well, let's put a bed down there. And then you stick a bed down there and it doesn't have the criteria to meet for safety, for flood reasons.
Right.
But you got somebody living down there. But you can still do it even if you sign it. People are gonna just disregard what they sign.
Exactly.
It's just more work for you.
Does that,
But,
The sound of
but,
that one.
but with it,
Do you think
with
you're really
with
gonna
it
be
in
able
there,
to
it's covering him
Accomplish anything
so that they
more.
can't come back and say,
If it's in the
you
ordinance.
didn't tell me I
you
couldn't
can't
do
use
it,
this for this
but it's in the
versus now you
ordinance.
gotta come in and sign this saying you're not.
True.
gonna use this
I mean,
for
it's a
this.
paper trail.
And I
it is a
accomplish
paper
anything.
trail, that's about what it is, they're putting it in there so
Yeah,
it doesn't leave them liable for not telling them.
right.
But if they read through it, they'll see it's in the ordinance that they shouldn't have done it.
Mhm. Right. Okay. That makes sense. Clearly I was getting tired,
I mean, you might not like it, but it's there to cover you.
right?
Would you guys want, would you guys like it, put it in there?
I'm not opposed to leaving it in there, but
Clarification, I mean,
I'll put
It's-
that one down as a check-in too, and then
Yeah.
we can rediscuss.
I couldn't think of examples. I think that's what
It's kind
stumped
of like
me.
if the city, or well, not city, but just like a basement bedroom. If it doesn't have any access, any exits, any egress window, it's not supposed to be classified as a bedroom.
Right,
And the theory there is you're not supposed to be sleeping there,
right.
but how many people do that? And should you then say, well, we're gonna make you sign this paper stating that you're not gonna use it for that, so that we release us from liability? I don't know that you're gonna really change anything, because if it's a bedroom,
Right.
then they're using it for a bedroom, but it's not a legal bedroom. Signing a piece of paper probably isn't gonna.
It's not going to change anything.
Right,
I mean,
no.
I
it's
see what you're
just,
saying.
right.
it's just one more thing for you to have to
But
keep track
I don't know
of.
that counties open up to liability either if the regulations require that not be used for living quarters, but somebody doesn't.
But this is optional language.
Well, your optional language is just making them sign something, and that's another step for you.
Right, it's more
And
paperwork.
it doesn't save the county any liability, or it's gonna save a life because you did that.
Mhm. It releases you of liability. I mean, we're self-insured, sure, the county's self-insured, but they might be happy to see that.
But I see what you're saying, it's another layer of protection for
Right.
Mhm.
liability.
I'll check with the county attorney's office. too.
Maybe worth it, say,
Maybe they'll say it ain't
It's-
gonna help you anyhow. so
yeah.
what difference does it
What
make?
difference does it make, exactly? So I don't want to complicate stuff any more than it already has to be, but, you know, so if it's option one going, oh, do we really need it?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And then the last one on C, the new and substantially improved structures shall be constructed with electrical. I think we have all, yeah, in ours, we have all of that. And then the alternative in language was just, I think the only thing that was included was including ductwork, which that was kind of already addressed in ventilation, the ventilation portion. So I think that was the only change that I saw. And actually, ours is a little more restrictive than that. Usually I have notes that says refer back to, but I didn't on this one. So you might want to check that, David, if we have the language in there already. Just a heads up, save you guys some work, maybe. And then on the next page, factory-built homes. I don't even know what page that is on ours.
15 on ours.
Is it 15 on our ordinances?
Oh, this one. No, I don't know what this one is.
Factory-built homes. I have page 62 is the next one, utility and sanitary systems.
I don't have
Okay,
a
on-
52.
On B, I circled, for some reason, I circled all new and substantially improved factory-built homes. Those placed in existing factory parks, subdivisions shall be anchored to resist flotation, collapse, or lateral movement. We already have that in ours. We already have anchorage systems may include, but are not limited to, use of over-the-top or frame ties to the ground anchors. I think the only thing we didn't have by state building code, our description.
Okay, keeping that.
I'm okay with it, yeah, or updating it, but if, you know, if it's already in there, maybe not put it somewhere else. So it's redundant. So utility and sanitary systems, that's on page 62 of number 6. Base flood elevation again, base flood elevation again. Those were the only ones I found there. Then the next page on 10, base flood elevation again. Accessory structures to residential uses is the title. And in the note, community may choose to instead require any type of accessory structure to comply the elevation requirements as outlined in section. What are your thoughts on that? As outlined in section, just that it reflects their section, not our section, if we have it. And then it said, the next paragraph, the structure shall be designed to have low flood damage potential. Its size shall not exceed 600 square feet. Shall not exceed accessory structures? Is that in line with our codes?
We don't have anything on size.
Okay. And then it says those portions of the structure located less than 1 foot above the BFE must be constructed of flood-resistant materials. I think that the square footage was what got me on that one,
Yeah, that,
the restriction to size. Sorry, I didn't write the page down on those. Anybody have any thoughts on that, or want it checked into, or not, don't really care? I
Do you
mean,
think that ours covers, I mean, it doesn't refer to the size.
yeah, I don't know that ours even reflects size, and I was just curious the restriction on size.
yeah, that's different, we never got into, kind of down those specific numbers.
Okay,
600 square feet, that's going pretty quick.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a garage.
yeah, 24 by 24 feet low. Yes, that was big.
I mean, if we're talking Morton buildings, that's quite a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, it could hit a lot of buildings, a lot
Mhm.
of accessory structures. It's said pretty quick, it doesn't take long to get to that size.
Right.
We didn't have any, I don't know where the benefits would come into play by adding 600 square feet.
Restrictions, is it
Well,
You
restrictive?
still,
That way it says these portions of structures located whatever must be constructed of flood-resistant materials.
Mhm.
I guess I don't know what you consider that, like screen treat or versus trigger lumber or
Cement,
cement, yeah.
steel? I don't know. I just have a Y next to it and a question mark.
Here's an example for a similar situation. If you go down West 7th Street, there's a little car lot there. Actually, there's two of them close by. One's being, the last I saw, it was being used for electrical supply. They raised that one up. But if you go another couple blocks past, it's right next door to Bernie's garden. That building on the other side was built with concrete block. That one complies with the floodplain because of the concrete block. I mean, those are examples to, you know,
I mean, I guess it's gonna make our ordinance more restrictive. By
Yeah,
far,
we put in at 600 feet.
because right now it's just any buildings, detached garages, sheds, and similar structures. Well, yeah, right there, 11A.
Okay,
the
11A.
definition, and then they're talking about, so, you know, if you have a freestyle garage, you can't put it there, it's not exempt. They're exempting structures under 600.
Right.
But once it's over 600 feet, then you can't do it.
Right.
Then I don't know where, I mean, you're gonna have a little more building you put up that's 1,000 square feet.
Now what do you do?
Yeah, well, you can't do it.
You can't do it. You restrict,
Versus before you're exempt, you could.
right.
So we're gonna encompass a lot of areas that, you know, say there is a flood, and there is this 50% or 20, well, depending where we land, the damage.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, now this guy can't fix his building because
It's bigger than the
the way we
600
changed
feet.
this,
Right.
we've precluded him from doing that. And then I think you're gonna run into a lot, because we're not, get away from the ag
Mhm.
issue.
Just people.
There's a Morton building that's built for 3 cars
Mhm.
would not exist, or not be able to exist if it suffered some damage in excess of 50%. Now they're done.
Yeah, but a pole building, they could put doors on it to open up the doors.
Right, but this doesn't say that.
Well, it's not, that would be built for flood control.
Oh, wait a second, you guys, so it's saying that these buildings, these detached garages, sheds, and other similar structures that are incidental to residential use are exempt from the base flood elevation requirements where the following criteria are satisfied.
Does not exceed 600 feet, that's our point. That's very small. Most of them exceed.
Concrete to a certain level, then you might be okay then.
Well,
But
if you
size
get
is-
it above, but,
Yeah.
but this to me reads that if it's over 600 square feet, then
It doesn't exist. It can exist. It can't be
right
re-
now we exempt.
No, it
accessories.
can exist, this is saying that it's exempt, like, don't even worry about messing with the flood, permit.
The following criteria are satisfied. The structure shall be designed low flood damage potential. Its size shall not exceed. And it
So
says
anything over
incidentally,
600 foot, you're gonna have to
residential use.
meet the BFE, you're gonna have to, meet the regular requirements. But your detached garages, sheds, whatever, structures that are 600 or less, those are exempt.
Right, and right now our ordinance exempts the structures of any size. That's what I was getting at currently, the way it's written. Any accessory structures, detached garages, sheds, and similar structures accessories to a residential use are exempt from the 100-year flood elevation requirements where the following criteria are satisfied. And nowhere in here does it talk about 600 feet. Once we add 600 feet, all of a sudden, we maybe
I see what you're saying.
encompass 50% more of the structures out there. And do we really need to, it's an accessory structure, it's a garage, it's, I don't know if you want to get more control over
I mean, I guess I'd go off of that we delete that addition.
the 600,
Yeah.
because you're just gonna grab a bunch of things that you don't think of and down the road,
Yeah.
if they're just like the last.
Well, let me find out if that's like something in the law or some
Okay.
regulation or something that they've determined that.
Take it out and see if they catch it.
Well,
But you see what I'm saying?
I do.
We're all of a sudden, maybe, there's a lot of buildings out there that we're all of a sudden now gonna be.
Mission.
That weren't, and that could just be a nightmare. It's not a human safety issue, because,
I could see a
You
loss.
could have-
650 square foot chicken coop, now I gotta raise it above.
well, or you could have a 600
Or you
square
can't,
foot
you can't replace it.
structure less than that maybe has stuff in that could create a safety hazard if there were a flood. And you could have a 2,000 square foot building that doesn't, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
So you're not really targeting a safety factor, you're just changing a size.
Restriction. The size restriction is something that's
That's, from what I see, or the way I read it, we're drastically changing our ordinance to encompass a lot more structures.
then I think the rest of it is pretty similar to what
We have already in our ordinance. The structure, oh, number 6 I had a beef with. The structure's walls shall include openings that satisfy the provisions of,
section.
and I don't know if the purpose of that was just to refer to the section. But openings? What about varmints that get into those,
Openings. We've had this discussion
What's that?
before. Varmints
that get,
in those openings.
if they're not screened off? What happens when you screen up one of those
Now,
openings
they're-
in a flood?
there again, I can give you another example of a building over on Tri-B Trim.
Mhm.
That building was built because of the flood, and the guy that had the double-decker bus built that building. The city made him put floodgate doors in there. And I
Okay.
think that might be what they're referring to here on that.
Okay,
So that, just like we talked before, the doors,
Right.
are they saying it twice? They said it once before that you had to have doors in your basement of your house so that the water can go back out. Are they saying this on on a structure that the water can run through it once you open the doors.
Right, but it just says opening, so I'm thinking just a blank opening, and I'm thinking people are gonna start putting chicken wire or whatever to keep the varmints from going into those openings, and then if you got that chicken wire there and we flood, you got all those corn stalks up against that building. Now you've got an even bigger problem because you have more than hydraulic pressure.
But
You have
that's what they're
debris.
trying to eliminate, so you get rid of that pressure.
Right, so I don't know, I guess that was the first thing that came to my mind. It's like, okay, what do they really mean here?
Well, and they also, I mean, you're requiring them to have the design to have the low flood damage potential.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that's gonna change in every building you build. Or not.
Well, yeah, I would think so.
Opening is generic, I mean, you know, that's kind of like leave it open to
But-
people's interpretation.
But again, what's the reason to have these doors to open? I mean, the way these doors were situated, the city got involved in that. And the way these doors were situated is when the water ran, they opened up these doors and run right through this building. Whereas if you're building a big building out in the county somewhere, you can open up the overhead door and get the same effect. The water's gonna run back out.
As long as you have
So
time,
why
time to
do we
think
need-
about it,
so why-
and you're
that's
there.
what-
So why do we need it?
Why do you need those requirements? And especially when it's.
But I was,
again,
yeah.
It's in an accessory building that has a low risk potential. You know, it's not like.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Risk is the key there, I think, because we already have high risk or maximum damage potential, which is on the next page.
So
That kind of
this, I mean,
encompasses
basically
everything.
it points us back to that page where we were talking about, well, we needed holes in the walls and getting clarification on that. So,
Mhm.
Yeah, where was that? I was looking for that real quick.
Just right on the, 2 pages back on page 15.
I'm kind of not a contractor, so I don't know how they handle
Yeah,
that.
it points you to the provisions of section 7B 4A.
Mhm.
So basically, you gotta have 2 openings.
Certain size.
Not higher above 1 foot above grade. Openings can have screens, valves, or other devices. Should be used solely for parking vehicles, building access, and damage potential. So,
So now, read this part here too. Has to be certified by a registered professional engineer also, correct? So there again, that chicken coop of 600 square feet, you know, whatever. Is that what that, for, you know, the top paragraph? Right there, yeah, you read that.
fully enclosed areas below the lowest floor, not including basements, that are subject to flooding shall be designed to automatically equalize hydrostatic flood forces on exterior walls by allowing the entry and exit of flood waters. Designs for meeting this requirement must either be certified by a registered professional engineer or meet or exceed the following minimum criteria. So if a person comes and says, look, Dan, I've got 2 openings and they're not above, a foot above grade, and, it's really just used for parking, I don't need an engineer.
And 1 square foot, or 1 square inch for every square foot of enclosed area, subject to flooding.
I think a lot of times anymore, if you have Morton come, for example, if they come in and build a building, there's an engineer's design on that.
Mhm.
So they're gonna be covered anyway.
Or a
Well,
licensed
like you said,
contractor,
if
hopefully.
you've got that work building and you've got an overhead door that,
You open it. You've got more than enough of
To-
the
to
minimum
tell somebody that
requirements.
They have to meet the
I mean, if they got concrete in the floor, the water could raise the concrete up and create a problem for that they'd have to replace that if the water got underneath the floor for some reason. But otherwise, the building itself is probably gonna have a engineer's design going with it because somebody needs it for snow load on the trusses, the roof.
And if you put up your building, and like you said, if you pour, the biggest thing I see here is the fact that those buildings may be more expensive to insure if they go ahead and do it.
Mhm.
But is it really a big deal if you let them do it for an accessory structure? If you're gonna park your Camaro in a garage that's at or below flood level,
Mhm.
and it floods, is that really a huge, I mean, that, you decided to build that building and do that.
Yeah,
But it doesn't present any potential risk of human life. And that's the biggest thing I see that the floodplains really, they are trying to minimize damage.
Absolutely.
You've got garage that you've got all kinds of waste oil in, but
Mhm.
that's a whole other avenue to go down too.
and that's, the EPA will step in on that.
I
We don't- we
mean,
don't-
yeah.
We don't want to go
I
there.
guess I don't know that it's really that important that you make them meet these guidelines for that accessory structure when it's, you kind of spell out what should and shouldn't be done.
Mhm.
Right off the top, number one, shall not be used for human habitation. Structures shall be designed to have low flow, flood damage potential. And then everything we've got kind of addresses it, but it doesn't limit it to
Right.
a specific guideline. And I don't know if that's been a problem or,
No, and there's been confusion and, but I like the, on the lines of what you guys are saying. It clicked just a few seconds ago when you were talking about we're gonna be capturing more than we wanted based on this.
I mean, is that something that you
No,
really
we don't want that.
need to go down? And I like, going back to what he made the comment of, with the 1 foot above base
Mhm.
flood elevation
Mhm.
requirement, don't go to 2, but also have that information available.
Yeah.
If you go above 2, this is how much you're, or at least look into what you're
Yeah.
saving.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna
Check.
say.
Influencing
Check,
those people to do that.
check the insurance before you build it.
It's just like if they put up a nice Morton building and it's a $100,000 building
Yeah.
and their insurance is X. But if it's 2 foot higher.
If you do it
then
this
is
way,
how much it is.
Yeah.
it's a huge
Then you're
savings.
gonna, there's gonna be people that might say, well, I'm gonna do that. And
Or-
Mhm.
I like the idea, we kind of thought that, we like that because you do get more points if you did it as an entire community, but I just think that, then that makes everybody have to meet that requirement. And,
is that, you get more, if you go to 2 foot
yeah, so
above, 3 foot
there's a
above?
thing that's called the community rating system, and it's stuff that the community does to earn points to lower the premium for everybody in that community. So the more things that we do to earn points, it helps lower the cost of insurance for people who have to have it.
So, but does it, if it's a requirement, say it was 3 feet base flood elevation, versus if everybody in that community, not that this is the case, but if everybody in the community still built 3 feet above, would the premium be any different?
I don't think so.
Okay. So really, you can accomplish it 2 ways, by mandating or by enticing them.
Suggesting to savings, yeah, everybody wants to save money. I think that's a goodwill.
I mean, right
It's-
now, if you
it's-
sit there and look at, what do you say, 258 versus 55 cents? That's a huge difference on an insurance premium versus, maybe it only takes 5 years or 10 years to get back their grading costs to do what they need to do.
Right.
Okay, I understand what you guys are
I'm just trying not to make it where all of a sudden now, next thing you know, you
And everybody's already pissed off and stressed out. Yeah, your office.
So I'm just make sure that you're gonna use this bedroom the way you say you're gonna use it today.
But then are you gonna police that?
Yeah.
And if you don't police that, are you the one responsible if something happens?
Right.
I mean, you got all kinds of ways you can look at that.
Yeah,
No,
No.
that was helpful. That
I like all
helped.
your points, that's good.
Yeah, on the same page.
Yeah. So then, did we end up on the maximum damage potential uses? Is that where we're at?
Yes.
And then, at first I was wondering, okay, why 500-year flood, but we're talking maximum damage here.
Right.
And we have no-
Back to your jails, your
Yeah.
hospitals, your fuel storage facilities, your.
More of the commercial and industrial entities.
And I would assume that in general, they were gonna wanna not build in a place that they're subject to something anyhow.
Well, but look at Mid-American Energy and look at AGP, and those guys are all in the floodplain.
But what was CF?
Mm-hmm.
What did they do with all their new construction to minimize impacts of
And they
flood?
put up some kind of a flood wall within within, I've never been there.
We've been down a lot of the property, they've done a lot of stuff.
And then I know CF has left their burns in Gelita. They've left a lot of their burns and incorporated them into their landscaping, so if it happens again, it's diverted water. So, not that, that has any impact on the maximum, because we don't have any language as far as maximum goes, but we're talking 500-year flood too. It was hundreds of years, so, I mean,
500-year flood.
maybe we'll never need it, but
You're gonna need some more.
I think that might be good, because that's a major, that looks like a major change or a major portion.
So you can only prepare so much, it's just like we did all that on the other side of the state, and the levee broke up north of them, and they went from a 100-year flood to a 1,000-year flood in, a couple days, so
Yeah,
there's a point of going to do so much.
right. I mean, it could potentially happen if it keeps happening around here.
Well, like I said, a task, the failure of the Adams Point Dam.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That would just take out everything. I mean, you can't prepare for, it could happen too.
Oh, it could happen.
Because I remember watching that the last, or two, not this last, but before, that was a concern that that guy had, was losing the dam.
It's happened before. Not around here, but it's happened before. Right. But how do you plan for it? 500 year.
It'd be like Niobrara, Nebraska, they moved that town 2 times.
Gosh. So, now we're on 19, I think?
Yes.
Okay, permitted uses. We have the same language as this. Ours is more descriptive. And again, I didn't mark my page. It's somewhere around page 64, I think. Permitted uses, maybe.
Page 64,
Oh,
number
wait,
7.
no, we jump around a lot here, so. General floodplain overlay district, okay, it starts on page 63. All uses within the general floodplain district should be permitted, and it says permitted uses, the following uses shall be permitted within the general floodplain district to the extent they are not prohibited by other ordinances, which covers us, and then it goes into a lot more detail than that one little paragraph. You see what I'm talking about? Page 63 and 64, item 1. And then number 2, I think, is also in ours, page 64B, conditional uses. It's included in that paragraph. And then it goes into review by Iowa Department of Natural Resources, not required for the proposed construction of new or replacement bridges or culverts. I don't think we have anything that, that's all new. We don't have anything in the ordinances that reflects that, so. I mean, do you just put that in there because it says they don't review it? We don't need to review it, it's secondary roads. They deal with all that.
Is that something that maybe the county engineer already has to meet for, on that one?
And then performance standards, that's on page 64, C1. 64, C1, performance standards, we have that. Page 64, C2, we have that. And then the next one is the following section shall only be included if the community's effective flood insurance rate maps contain the shallow flood zones. Shallow flood zones, okay, that's the next section, which we have. We already have all that information. Check, check, check until we get down to B3. The shallow flooding area is designated as either an AH or AO zone in the flood insurance rate map. Do we have those designations on Beacon? I'm not familiar with those.
Yeah, we do.
Because then it says drainage paths are required around structures on slopes to adequately guide water away from structures. And that one we don't have in our language that I could find. Anybody have any thoughts on that one? I mean, if you have it already built up, that 1 foot increase in grade, you're already kind of doing it.
I'll ask on that one because I've never even heard of a drainage path before.
I have them out in the country. I have them around one of my houses, just to redirect the water out and away from the house. Elevated, you know, you get your survey out and get your elevations and make sure you got flow. But I do that just on my own. It keeps water away from my building. Then it goes into section 10, appointment and duties of the Board of Adjustment. That's on page 68 of our information. I don't think there's anything that's not included there. Next, page 21, it just refers again to just base flood, where we have a 100-year flood. And then everything else is the same as what we have.
All right, so I'm gonna just make sure.
Hopefully you're taking notes. Otherwise, you can have mine.
Yeah, but you might need them for next time.
I might. I'll need copies.
You did make copies?
I'll need copies, yes. With all my little notes and circles and question marks.
So the next time you guys will get this again, I'll send it to you in email once I get Bill's answers to these questions that we have here.
Okay.
And I'm gonna put the ordinance together like how we would adopt it, but I'll highlight the parts that are new, and then I'll put the you know, whatever, the optional or answer below.
So we can distinguish what we decided on
Yeah.
and what we decided not on, and, okay.
So you ought to do that, then we'll have to have another meeting before a public hearing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a
Review
good
that.
idea.
Yeah.
Let's have another regular meeting, and then, the meeting after that. So we'll hold our next regular meeting, and, if Bill gives thumbs up after that, then we'll publish a public hearing for March.
Okay. So are you going to rearrange the content in our existing ordinance to match this?
Yeah, I'll rewrite it.
Okay, so it still looks consistent with the rest of our book, but it's just in there. That way it's easier for you
So
to
you're gonna take and
cross-reference
place that stuff in this.
the stuff in ours.
Right.
Can these other items wait for the public hearing, and we looking to keep them all together?
I would say probably, you know, we could just run them all together. But the access and the street frontage one was basically taking the recommendation that you guys had earlier last year. And we got input from county engineer's office. And that was on the whole shared drive, 1 lot, 2 lot, 3 users. Now that I live on a private road, I understand that better. And then the other one was the telecommunication towers and the state code change. So all we did was add in accordance with Iowa code section, whatever, block.
Okay.
So those I feel like are really,
So did you include the change in language for that? So reading it and that back that this is, you know, like,
so, I mean, and I assume that those were changes that you guys were gonna want to make on the driveways and on the telecommunications when we have to, so.
okay.
Or if you guys want to set a public hearing for those two next month, we can knock those out real quick. I mean, it's a,
Or is it easier to just do it all at once? Or what?
Do you anticipate much for public participation with this?
no.
Okay, but any of them actually, probably not. Because if there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of people here, we're not going to get through them all. That's kind of a key element.
You want to do the easier ones next month, and then we'll save the flood one for itself?
Do this one March, right, after we hear from Clucio.
Yeah.
And
well,
get
we'll
our
have that
adjustment. We'll
after-
have this
if you
ready.
Put everything together, then
We'll do it next month,
we'll do that next month.
and then we'll have the public
Public meeting
March.
in March.
So I'll
Okay.
just sit on the tower and access, just throw them all together and do it in March.
Because you're probably not gonna have one more person here doing it all at once, or I would assume, or maybe you will, maybe you'll have 10 people here on that.
I don't know. You never know what to expect. People get up in arms when it comes to zoning, you know that.
You don't wanna have to move it downstairs so you got enough room.
We'll put it on the radio.
No.
Bruce wants to get back on TV.
Thank you, this is really helpful.
Good.
This is your input, and just running through it.
Good. It was kind of fun. I don't know. We don't have any public out there, so don't need that. So meeting adjourned or
Motion adjourned.
to adjourn.
Second it.